In early February, less than 3 weeks before the war in Ukraine began, Joe Biden suggested on camera that he might take out these pipelines. Watch.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Notice how he phrased that. And he's the president. Doesn't phrase things by accident, particularly when he's reading off cards. He didn't say, I will pause the delivery of gas from Russia to Germany. He said, there won't be a Nord Stream 2. We'll put an end to it. We'll take it out. We'll blow it up. How will you do this? He was asked. I promise you we will be able to do it. They thought this through. And yet those watching, very much including us, didn't take Biden seriously when he said it. This is the president who has declared climate change the most pressing emergency in the history of the world.
Okay, welcome back. So, the EA specifically warned Germany about attacks on the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipelines this summer, in June. So, the US was already kind of like, hey, there could be some attacks on these pipelines, which sends this sort of implication that either they intercepted communications that suggested there could be attacks by Russia or Ukraine or otherwise, or they themselves were manufacturing these plans to attack these pipelines. We'll touch on that, including what Joe Biden said. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline, carrying natural gas from Russia to Europe, never officially opened because Russia invaded Ukraine and Europe instantly stopped supporting permits for the Nord Stream 2, even though the project had just come to completion. The Nord Stream 1, however, previously was pretty critical because it helped deliver the 40% of Europe's natural gas that it gets from Russia. So this is not like a small portion of natural gas for Europe that needs to be replaced. It's 40% of Europe's natural gas was coming from Russia. And the Nord Stream 1 was critical for that, and the Nord Stream 2 would have helped a lot, help bring the cost of natural gas down and be able to deliver more, even more efficiently. But even the Nord Stream 1 was shut down after the invasion started, and while it did temporarily reopen to a reduced capacity, somewhere at 15 to 25%, the pipeline was again closed at the start of September, which is just the beginning of this month, about 4 weeks ago. Now, both pipelines just got attacked. 3 explosions occurred. We believe those are explosions because a Swedish seismologist noticed the explosions occurred right before a drop in pressure in both pipelines, and then bubbling up leaks were discovered. You could Google some of the images of these leaks. They're pretty dramatic. You just see these big circles that almost look like hurricanes in the water of bubbled up water. That is not so important. What's more important, though, is that these explosions were obviously conducted by somebody. Somebody bombed these pipelines, and these pipelines aren't exactly easy to bomb because they're steel pipelines. They're as deep as 300 to 400 feet, reinforced steel pipelines, and it's likely that somebody would have required some form of sophisticated technology to not only locate the pipelines, which they are mapped, but to get to those pipelines, and then bring some kind of explosive strong enough to burst those pipelines. It's not like we could just swim down there with a scuba tank and whack it a few times with a shovel and boom, there you go. No. On top of this, both of the fuel lines were primed, and it's likely that whoever attacked these lines knew that the fuel lines were primed, which means they were full of fuel. Which also means you can't just drive a submarine up right next to it because you're going to be in the blast zone likely, unless of course you can fire a torpedo from further away. But these were European Union European Union waters. They're not international waters. So they're likely heavily surveilled regions, and a submarine shooting a torpedo from a distance would have likely been noticed by certainly the United States military, but you would also expect by, either the Swedes or Denmark or the European Union or NATO to some extent, because after all, that's our job, is to monitor when torpedoes start flying around, okay? Like, that seems odd. It seems more likely that somehow maybe a submarine was able to place an explosive or wrap an explosive around this pipeline and essentially sneak in and sneak out. Either a covert mission that was authorized from a European or United States or Ukrainian side or a Russian side. We'll talk more about the speculation around that. But anyway, as a result of these explosions, massive natural gas leaks occurred very rapidly, causing potentially the same pollution that would have otherwise been caused by 20 million vehicles conducting their average driving for about a year. That's a lot of pollution. And that didn't happen over the span of a year, like 20 million vehicles driving around. It happened in the span of a few hours. That's because of the massive methane leaks that came along this pipeline burst. And methane is 80 times more damaging to the environment than CO2, especially at these concentrations. So the question now is, okay, like, why would somebody do this? Like, this is crazy. Like, the pipelines were off. What's the benefit to doing this? Why would you sabotage and potentially damage your own infrastructure? If you're Russian, it's your infrastructure. If you're European, it's your infrastructure. Like, what the hell? Why would this happen? So I made a little diagram to try to think about this, and then I want